Silat or Pencak Silat, the martial art born in the shadow of the jungle. The hidden roots of Silat, where fighting taught itself to survival, before there was a name, before there was a system. Before any organized school or style existed, Silat was already breathing. Not in temples, not in academies, not before audiences. He breathed in the humidity of the Southeast Asian rainforests, where every wrong step could mean death. There, long before writing recorded dates or kings, entire peoples learned that survival required more than strength. It required adaptation, observation, and silence. Silat wasn't born as a sport. It wasn't born as a martial art in the modern sense. It was born out of a vital need. The peoples of the regions we now know as Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, southern Thailand, and the Philippines faced a brutal world. Wild animals, tribal disputes, external invasions, hostile terrain, and a total lack of institutional protection. The body was the only reliable weapon. The mind, the only shield. The earliest forms of Silat emerged from direct observation of nature. Warriors and hunters studied the behavior of tigers, snakes, birds of prey, and monkeys. Each animal movement carried a lesson: when to advance, when to retreat, when to feign weakness, when to attack with lethal precision. These patterns were reproduced by the human body, adapted to anatomy and the needs of real combat. Unlike many martial arts that originated from organized armies or formal warrior castes, Silat was born among ordinary people. Farmers, fishermen, hunters, and traders needed to defend themselves against ambushes, assaults, and sudden conflicts. There was no time for lengthy training or overly complex techniques. Every movement needed to work instantly. That's why Silat has always been known for its brutal efficiency: low blows, joint attacks, use of body weight, quick takedowns, and direct submissions. The goal was never to defeat an opponent. It was to neutralize them and stay alive. Honor, aesthetics, or showmanship came later, if they came at all. Over the centuries, these techniques began to be passed down orally, from master to disciple, almost always within clans or families. There were no books. There were no formal records. Knowledge was considered too sacred and dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. In many villages, teaching Silat to a foreigner was seen as treason. As kingdoms began to form in the region, such as Srivijaya and Majapahit, Silat ceased to be merely a tool for individual survival and became an integral part of the cultural and military identity of these peoples. Warriors trained in Silat protected territories, trade routes, and political leaders. The art began to diversify, shaped by the environment, culture, and spiritual beliefs of each region. And here emerges one of the most profound elements of Silat: the fusion between combat and spirituality. Unlike purely technical systems, Silat has always believed that the body only moves correctly when the mind and spirit are aligned. Rhythms, breathing, states of consciousness, and even rituals preceded training. Fighting wasn't just about acting, it was about feeling. This spiritual connection also helped explain why Silat appeared invisible to the outside eye for so long. While other martial arts were openly displayed, documented, or taught, Silat remained hidden, flowing silently through generations. It didn't need to be seen. It simply needed to work. When foreign powers began arriving in Southeast Asia, Arab traders, Chinese, and later European colonists, Silat entered a new phase. What once served only for local conflicts now became a tool of cultural and physical resistance against armed and technologically superior invaders. And it is at this point that Silat ceases to be just a fight and becomes a language of resistance. Over the centuries, what had begun as a survival instinct started to take on a collective form. Southeast Asia was ceasing to be merely a mosaic of isolated villages and was beginning to organize itself into maritime and land-based kingdoms, connected by trade routes, territorial wars, and fragile alliances. It was in this context that Silat ceased to be merely an individual practice and became a strategic tool of power. Between the 7th and 13th centuries, the kingdom of Srivijaya, based in present-day Sumatra, dominated vast areas through naval and commercial control. Warriors trained in primitive forms of Silat, were responsible for protecting ports, ships, and trade routes that connected India, China, and the Arab world. In these coastal regions, Silat began to adapt to new environments: combat on unstable surfaces, fighting in tight spaces, defense against short weapons and improvised blades. Later, between the 13th and 15th centuries, the powerful Majapahit Empire, based in Java, took this art to a new level. Silat became part of the training of elite warriors. It was taught not only as a fighting technique, but as an expression of discipline, loyalty, and cultural identity. Each region under Majapahit's influence adapted Silat to its own needs, creating variations that reflected climate, terrain, religious beliefs, and even social structure. It is during this period that the first clear distinctions between styles begin to emerge. In dense jungle areas, Silat favored low, silent, and circular movements, ideal for ambushes. In mountainous regions, techniques involving unbalancing, throws, and the use of body weight emerged. In coastal areas, the focus was on agility, rapid movement, and combat against multiple opponents. But despite this diversity, there was a common principle that united all forms of Silat: the supremacy of adaptation. There was no fixed technique. There was no absolute movement. The fighter needed to adapt to the environment, the enemy, and the situation. This philosophy made Silat extremely difficult to predict, and for that very reason, feared. With the consolidation of the kingdoms, Silat also began to occupy a symbolic space. Ceremonies, ritual dances, and public demonstrations began to incorporate martial movements. To outsiders, it appeared to be art, culture, or a celebration. To those who knew the inner code, each gesture concealed an attack, a takedown, a finishing move. Silat practitioners learned to hide in plain sight. The arrival of Islam in the region, starting in the 13th century, also left deep marks. Far from eliminating ancient traditions, the new religion merged with local practices. Silat began to incorporate Islamic spiritual concepts such as self-control, intention, and moral responsibility. Training the body without training the mind came to be seen as incomplete. The struggle was not merely physical, it was spiritual. This aspect helped reinforce the selective nature of the teaching. Masters carefully chose their disciples. Strength or courage alone were not enough. Character was necessary. The art could not fall into the hands of those who would use it irresponsibly, for Silat was not created for gratuitous chaos, but for the preservation of life and community order. Meanwhile, the world around them began to change. Unfamiliar sails appeared on the horizon. First European merchants, then soldiers. Then came cannons. Gunpowder was beginning to redefine warfare, but paradoxically, it made Silat even more relevant. Weapons could fail. Distances could close. And when that happened, the fight reverted to hand-to-hand combat. Silat, silent and patient, was about to enter his darkest phase. The phase in which ceasing to fight meant losing everything. When the first Europeans arrived in Southeast Asia in the late 15th century, they found not only exotic lands and spice routes, they encountered organized peoples with their own culture, codes of honor, and, above all, efficient ways of fighting. The Portuguese, Spanish, British, and later the Dutch quickly realized that dominating that region would require more than ships and cannons. It required breaking the local spirit. From the 16th century onwards, with the rise of the Dutch East India Company, VOC, colonial control became systematic. Kingdoms were overthrown, sultanates weakened, and local leaders executed or co-opted. But there was something the colonizers couldn't completely eliminate: the Silat. Europeans understood early on that this art was not just fighting, it was a system of resistance. Warriors trained in Silat knew the jungle as an extension of their own bodies. They attacked at night, in silence, disappearing without a trace. They didn't face armies in open battles. They preferred psychological warfare, attrition, constant fear. For a European soldier, armed and trained for formal battles, facing a Silat fighter was like fighting against the earth itself. The colonial response was brutal. Martial practices were banned, traditional weapons were confiscated, community gatherings were monitored. Any form of group physical training was viewed with suspicion. Silat instructors were persecuted, imprisoned, or killed. In some territories, teaching Silat became a crime punishable by execution, but Silat had already learned over the centuries to survive in the shadows. Art hasn't disappeared. It has become camouflaged. Combat movements have come to be taught as ritual dance. Training sessions were moved to the early hours of the morning, away from colonial eyes. Lethal techniques were fragmented, hidden within symbolic gestures, transmitted only orally, from master to disciple, under oath. It was during this period that Silat became even more silent and more deadly. Without access to conventional weapons, practitioners honed their skills in using everyday objects: wooden sticks, agricultural tools, cloths, ropes, and most importantly, short blades hidden in their clothing. Hand-to-hand combat became the absolute priority. Strikes began to target joints, throat, spine, and balance. There was no room for showing off. Every movement needed to be effective immediately. Colonialism further fragmented Silat. Isolated regions developed their own styles, often without knowing of each other's existence. This led to the emergence of dozens, then hundreds, of distinct systems. Silat Minangkabau, Silat Bugis, Silat Betawi, Silat Sunda, among many others. Each bore the mark of pain, oppression, and adaptation. But perhaps the most profound change has been internal. Silat has ceased to be merely a defense of the community and has become a defense of identity. Training in Silat meant affirming, we still exist. It was a silent political act, a secret code transmitted through the body. Each master who continued teaching directly challenged colonial power. There are historical accounts of European officials who feared the seemingly peaceful population more than open rebellions. Because they knew, where there was Silat, there was latent resistance. A people trained to fight without weapons was never completely subdued. In the 19th century, with the advance of European industrialization and the tightening of colonial control, Silat reached its most critical point. Many systems were lost forever. Masters died without passing on their knowledge. Entire lineages disappeared. What survived was only what managed to adapt to the absolute silence. And, paradoxically, it was this extreme repression that shaped modern Silat. Art learned that it could not depend on formal structures. It couldn't depend on public recognition. It needed to exist within the individual, ready to emerge only when necessary. But the world was about to change again. The 20th century was approaching. Ideas of independence were beginning to circulate. Colonial rule was beginning to crumble. And that which had been forced to live in the shadows for centuries was about to return to the light, not as a relic of the past, but as a living symbol of freedom. Silat had survived the worst. Now, he would be reborn. The 20th century marked a definitive turning point in the history of Southeast Asia. After centuries of European domination, the colonial empires began to crumble. World War I weakened economies, World War II dismantled power structures, and the colonies began to see something that previously seemed impossible: independence. In this scenario, the Silat emerged from the shadows and returned to its original role, a weapon of war. In Indonesia, during the Japanese occupation, 1942-1945, many local leaders received military training. But outside the barracks, it was the Silat masters who taught real, silent, and efficient combat. Indonesian guerrillas used ambush techniques, body control, and blade fighting inherited directly from traditional Silat to confront better armed troops. When Sukarno declared Indonesia's independence in 1945, Silat was already deeply ingrained in the popular resistance, not as a sport, but as a language of survival. The same thing happened in Malaysia, Brunei, and southern Thailand. Silat wasn't taught in academies, it was taught in villages, forests, and isolated houses. During this period, art became established as a nationalist symbol. Training in Silat came to mean protecting the land, culture, and collective memory. With independence, a dilemma arises. What to do with an art form created to kill, in a world now seeking reconstruction? The answer was cultural. Newly formed governments realized that Silat should not be eliminated, but rather given new meaning. It began to be incorporated into ceremonies, festivals, and cultural performances. Movements that were once lethal are softened, choreographed, and ritualized. Traditional music, drums, flutes, gongs, takes center stage. But this did not mean a total loss of essence. On the contrary, the oldest masters created a clear division: Silat lahir, external, visible, cultural, demonstrative; Silat batin, internal, secret, spiritual, combative art, then exists in two worlds at the same time. Unlike Western martial arts, Silat never separated body and spirit. Every movement carries intention. Every posture is a state of mind. In many systems, training begins with Islamic prayers, ancient mantras, or silent meditations. It is believed that the true power of Silat lies not in strength, but in absolute body awareness. The practitioner learns to sense their opponent before attacking. Learn to use fear against those who threaten you. Learn to remain calm amidst the chaos. Learn to use fear against those who threaten you. Learn to remain calm amidst the chaos. In the post-war period, masters began to emigrate. Some went to Europe, others to the United States. But the culture shock was immediate. The West, accustomed to sport-oriented martial arts like judo and karate, didn't know how to classify Silat. Many saw it as folk dance, others as theater. Few understood its true effectiveness. This led to an initial dilution of the art outside of Southeast Asia. Nevertheless, authentic systems survived, especially in military, police, and self-defense circles. The cultural shift happens in the 21st century. Films like The Raid 2011 and The Raid 2 introduce Silat to the world as it truly is: fast, brutal, direct, and real. The impact is immediate. Special forces, MMA fighters, and self-defense instructors begin studying Silat, not for its aesthetics, but for its functionality. Although not widely publicized, Silat is present in modern MMA. Concepts of short-range control, unbalancing, limb attacks, and quick transitions are directly inherited from this art. Many trainers incorporate Silat principles without even mentioning the name. It has become an invisible influence, just as it always was. Currently, Silat is recognized as intangible cultural heritage in several countries. Federations are trying to standardize sporting rules, while traditional masters are fighting to preserve pure lineages. There is tension. Standardization can save us, but it can also kill our essence. Silat is currently facing the same dilemma it faced during colonialism: adapt or disappear. Silat never sought fame. He never wanted applause. He was born in silence, grew up in oppression, and survived because he understood something fundamental. True strength doesn't need to be displayed. While other martial arts have become sports, Silat has remained a language of resistance, identity, and survival. To learn about Silat is to understand that the history of martial arts is not only made up of champions, but of entire peoples who fought to exist. And this story is not over yet. And so we conclude another chapter of our journey, but the adventure continues. For the world is full of styles, stories, and legends waiting to be discovered. And if you're not already following us, we're unlikely to see each other again. But if you are, know that here, you'll discover all the martial arts ever taught around the world, each one and its origins. Martial Origins invites you to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to give us that boost that only true warriors possess, and leave your comment below. Share this with a friend so they too can enter the world of martial arts, because perhaps the next video will reveal secrets that few imagine. Until the next journey.